Last month, a number of teen suicides shocked the nation and shifted our attention back onto this troubling and deadly conduct. What are the warning signs that your children may be in danger? What recourse do you have should you see these signs? And what legally is being done to protect our youth? Tonight, bullying and the deadly price of this behavior. I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. In days gone by, bullies would taunt and tease and send a student home in tears. In today's world, the teasing has become harassment and can spread without end via social media, handheld devices, and the internet. And the victims of this behavior are searching for escape by any means possible, including death. September proved an alarmingly dangerous and headline-grabbing month. On September 9th, Billy Lucas, a 15-year-old from Greensburg, Indiana, committed suicide by hanging himself from a tree. His friends say he was bullied for years by classmates who suspected he was gay. On September 23rd, Asher Brown, a 13-year-old from Houston, Texas, shot himself in the head. Asher, too, was bullied for years. Seth Walsh, the California teen who attempted suicide on September 19th by hanging, died after 9 days of being on life support. And on September 22nd, Tyler Clementi, a student at Rutgers University, jumped to his death from the George Washington Bridge after his private encounters were videotaped and streamed over the internet by 2 other students without his knowledge. And the list goes on and on. Every day more names join these. Some publicized, many others not. But something needs to be done, and done soon. Joining us tonight are Eric Carrera, Associate Executive Director, Montrose Counseling Center; Andrew Solomon, Professor of Law, South Texas College of Law, and School Board Trustee at Pearland ISD; and Dr. Peter Messiah, Manager, HISD's Safe Schools Program. Welcome to all of you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think where we need to start with all of this so people understand, and I'll start with you, Doctor, is what is our definition of bullying?
Bullying is behavior that's repeated over time that is meant to humiliate, intimidate, or harass someone. It also involves a real or perceived imbalance of power. That could be a physical imbalance, or it could be an emotional or a psychological imbalance of power.
Okay, but gentlemen, how is this any different than what probably so many of us went through when we were in school? The teasing, taunting. I mean, it shifted. Some kids got teased one day, some not. Why is this so different?
Well, I think there's different types of bullying now with the internet and with Facebook and other computer programs. There's different like cyberbullying is what they talk about, and that's something that, for example, I didn't have when I was growing up.
I think one of the problems is trying to differentiate between quote-unquote normal conduct and conduct that goes beyond being normal into what we would define as bullying, cruel conduct, where there's a power imbalance upon a weaker child or a weaker student, weaker in some capacity. And I think that's one of the difficult problems and issues that we're facing, is trying to figure out what's normal and what's not normal. And I think there's a misconception that it's a part of everyday life for a child, that bullying is a part of everyday life.
Well, and let's touch base on that. We can sit and we can generalize and say that teasing that we suffered was not bullying. We could generalize and say that, but we still have to go back and look at the definition. Was it repeated over time? Was it a mutual thing, or was it someone picking at you? So people saying, well, I endured teasing, it's not the same. It has changed. It absolutely has not. I've spoken to a group of children, and they had to have their parents with them at the Children's Museum during a partnership that HISD had with them this summer. And when I asked, do you know who your bully is? It wasn't the children that answered. It was the adults that answered the questions. Every adult sitting in that room remembered who their bully was, and they shared stories, and they brought tears to their eyes when they talked about them. So absolutely, it is the same, and we have to make sure that people are aware of that.
But then, if it is the same, are the reactions different now? Or was there still a high rate of suicide from this behavior years ago? Or has something changed in our culture which is making suicide the answer to these problems?
I don't think that we can say it's the same. Some aspects of it are the same, but cyberbullying, I think, is different, quite different, and arguably worse because of the force multiplier effect of the technology. It used to
Andrew,
be if you
were gonna
bullied.
Yeah, I want to jump in with Andrew real quick.
Eric?
Eric, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
When you look at all of this, and you folks over at Montrose Counseling Center hear a lot of these stories firsthand come through, what is different then? Why is suicide an alternative?
I'm not really sure exactly why it's different now and why suicide is more prevalent now than it was before. I know you have to have some factors involved for somebody who is probably going to commit suicide more so than somebody else. Somebody who feels like they don't belong, they isolate, they don't have a whole lot of friends. They call it thwarted belongingness. Also somebody who feels like they are better off if they were not around. And then the third factor would be somebody who is more at risk of suicide because he's been maybe he's been bullied in the past, maybe he's had some child abuse issues, things like that. So with all those three factors coming together, that makes somebody more susceptible to bullying.
Well, I'd like to clarify, too, although we have new issues with cyberbullying, with texting and sexting and all those issues that come along, what my original response is that bullying has been around for a long time. It's not a new thing, and then we still have some original things that occur. Of course, when we grew up, we could run home to safety, and we could run to our parents' car and get to safety. With cyberbullying, with the technology that's out there, kids are followed in their home, and there are definitely different aspects with that. The traditional bullying, you knew who your assailant was or who your assailant is. With texting, with cyberbullying, and using social media to bully and harass or to exclude someone, which is also a form of bullying, you don't know that. It's an anonymous situation. It could be your football star. It could be your head of the cheerleading squad. It could be your straight-A student that is going home and is bullying someone and doing that. But what I want to say is that bullying has been around a long time. We've suffered from bullying. A lot of people have. A lot of times that we haven't labeled it because in the past, as in today, people will still say, oh, that's just boys being boys, and it's a rite of passage. But it does not build character. It actually absolutely tears down character. It has the opposite effect of what people think that it has. And kids do not have to, nor do they deserve to go through bullying. With the suicide, and we're talking about suicide, we also have to look at the factors of, do your kids, do they have the social supports in place? Are they loners? There are different risk factors for suicide that occur. And we don't know, even today, we know because the media has done a good job of bringing the issue forward. But in the past, as in today, we don't have very many indicators unless there's some sort of remnant that's left by the person that has committed suicide that this was caused by suicide. So there have been suicides going on all along. We don't know if that is attributed directly to suicide, to bullying.
I'll go back down to Andrea. We had a very similar experience, you and I, in the fact that we went to our Facebook page, you went to one of your classes, and both talked about this subject. And both of us got the same response, which surprised us, was the audience that responded to us laid blame on parents.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I asked my class yesterday at school their thoughts on bullying and cyberbullying and their comments on it, and they laid blame on the parents, which did surprise me a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, we put it up on our Facebook page, and the reaction we expected to hear is schools aren't doing their job. Schools are the problem here and all. And once again, we have a lot of people blaming it on the parents. If, in fact, there is truth to that it's starting in the home with the parents, what can any of us do to help correct that part of the problem?
Well, I do, and don't get me wrong, I do think it didn't completely surprise me that blame was being laid on the parents. I think that it involves a culture that needs to start in the home and go through the schools, a culture of tolerance for diversity, for differences. And to me, a lot of bullying conduct gets back to the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And I think that's a message that probably should start in the home, but needs to be reinforced through school programs. I know our school, I know HISD has started a bunch of educational programs through the schools that hopefully will help kids better understand bullying, its effects, its consequences, and just set a mindset that it's inappropriate conduct, that it's not proper behavior.
Eric, I hear them saying over and over again, there are these programs out there, they're in schools, but you folks are still getting calls all the time. Where are we missing the education and the ability to curb this behavior?
Well, I think some things like this program, for example, is bringing awareness to the issue, and a lot of the stories that are being written about this, that program that they're doing with the YouTube videos, it gets better, where they're encouraging gay and lesbian people to upload videos and talk a little bit about their coming out issues and how their lives were, and how it's, suicide is not an option for them, and then where they are today based on where they were before. Educational stuff like that.
You bring up the gay and lesbian issue, and there is a disproportionately large number of teen suicides among the gay, lesbian, transsexual by organizations, groups, right?
Yes, I mean, the statistics say that 42% of GLBTQ, that would be gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and questioning youth experience suicidal ideation. And
what number was that? What percentage?
42% experience suicidal ideation. And as high as 28% have had at least one suicide attempt in the past year.
How does that differ then among non-GLBTQ students?
I don't have the statistics on the non-GLBTQ students, but I know that it's, fairly less than that.
Any numbers on?
No, I don't have those direct numbers on the suicide rates.
But this is something that crosses across all students, all ethnicities.
It absolutely does. All ethnicities, even sometimes within ethnicities, with the color of your skin, skin tone, sorts of issues that go on. But let's look at the anatomy of why a kid would commit suicide based on bullying. And you would have to go back and look at brain research. And the brain research that we know says that the frontal lobe is not fully developed until adolescence. A lot of people tend to say adolescence ends at the age of 18. I've spoken to some women's group, and they say for men it's not until 45. But whatever it is, the reality is it is 27 years of age. And so if you look at the statistics with kids, when they are bullied, they will not tell. 85% don't tell anybody. They keep it to themselves, and they keep it to themselves because their perception is an adult can't or won't do anything to help them in the situation. Only about 4% ever get reported to an adult. 11% go to their peers. Now, if you look at that, the frontal lobe not being fully developed, that's where we make our decisions from. The frontal lobe really controls that. So if you look at the suicide with regard to bullying, the kid is sitting up here thinking, if I commit suicide, then that bully's going to feel sorry once I'm dead. My parents are going to feel sorry. My teachers, my school will feel sorry. But they're not making that connection in their decision-making process to say, but I'm not going to be around tomorrow to witness that. It goes back to the whole video thing. And in our day, it was the whole Roadrunner thing. Wile E. Coyote kept going after the Roadrunner, and he got killed every time by something from Acme. And you would think, my God, Coyote, won't you ever really realize if you see Acme, it means the end for you? But he kept getting back up. And our kids think that they're going to get back up after a suicide. And what we have to do, even though the media is doing a good job of covering it, we need to be sure that we're sending the clear and consistent message. You will not get back up after you commit suicide. Death is final. And that is something that they are not making that connection with.
Okay, let's move into some practical things right now for our audience at home. What are the warning signs parents, teachers, administrators should be aware of? What are you looking for to know if a child possibly is at risk?
Quick and extreme change in their behavior. Looking at them all of a sudden becoming a loner, looking at sudden drops in their grades, not showing up to schools or not wanting to go to school, dropping out of normal activities, and isolation. So those are things that you need to look at as far as the victim on that. As far as the perpetrator, if you take away certain rights in the essence of cyberbullying, if you start limiting their time that they could use technology, and if you get a severe reaction, you might want to investigate that because there's something going on there.
I think that's an important point, especially when it comes to cyberbullying. You're going to see changes in usage when a child's being bullied. You're going to see reactions to text messages coming in, emails coming in, meaning changes in the reaction. And so you have to be careful and monitor changes in behavior, changes in reaction to technology, using the technology less.
Eric?
And one thing I was going to expand upon is the isolation, very important. You know, how is your child involved in after-school activities and different clubs, whatever it happens to be? I mean, if you find that the child is isolating more, you know, that is one of the risk factors. It's one of the distal factors is what they call it. And then also if you hear any conversations or notice that your child is feeling like, you know, I'd be better off dead, the world would be better off without me, that kind of thing, you know, that would be considered. Perceived burdensomeness is that factor. That's one of the 3 distal factors.
So any kind of symptoms of depression are our first steps. And so if you notice any of those, the classic signs, those are also at play in here too.
And the key is sudden changes, you know, and quick changes. You know, we all have evolving moods throughout our lives, but anything that is sudden and out of the ordinary is what you want to look at.
Either one of you?
Abnormal withdrawal from friends, from families. That's sort of the warning sign.
Absolutely.
I want to expand on something you said as far as if a lot of people don't tell the adults. The problem with telling adults is then you get teased even more for being a snitch and for being a coward. No, you have to go up to mom, you have to go up to the teacher and tell, you know, that kind of thing. And that happened to me too, because I tried telling adults a lot of times, and then I'd get teased for that. So It's kind of like it never ends.
That's the next step. So you notice these signs, and it's either in your students or and I'm hoping teachers already know these signs to be looking for. They're all trained for these things, I hope.
We hope.
And of course, class sizes and things make it more and more difficult, but parents also have to be aware. You see any of this happen, what do you do as a parent? What's the next step you make? Because, like you said, if you confront the situation, you can, I'm sure the fear is you can make it worse. So what do you do? What do you recommend? I'll start right here.
That's a good question. You know, the main thing that I can think of is that, you know, talk to your child about it, talk about what's going on, and let him say what's going on, and if the child needs to see a counselor or something like that, to talk about what, you know, the fear.
I think the first step is to focus on your child, to make your child feel safe, secure, and that action's going to be taken, and that the bullying is going to come to an end.
So help us here. What exactly do you say?
And so I think that you need to have that discussion and come up with an action plan, and I think jointly, parent and child. And part of that action plan is talking to people at the school. A lot of the bullying occurs at school, and so if it's a school-related problem, I think you need to schedule a meeting with the proper administrator or teacher. Ultimately, I think something should be put in writing also. I think that you should consider seeing a counselor.
Let's look at that. The conversation you have with your child. If you come up to a young guy and you say, "Are you being bullied at school?" the answer is going to be no, because I have that bravado. So you need to ask some probing questions like, "Tell me about your day in school. Is there anything? What did you like about school? What were some things you didn't like? Is there someone you don't particularly care for?" And then start digging down and into those kinds of questions to find out the questions.
When it gets to the point, though, and the child does admit to you, "I am being bullied," and I'm thinking, boy children, girl children, they lose a bit of self-respect when they say those words. Suddenly they're less than. And I think they would think in their parents' eyes or their teacher's eyes, because they're the victim of this. What do you say as a parent to reassure your child?
Look, here's what we have to do, and where we're moving. I can speak for my district. We're sending the clear and consistent message that to the victim, you do not deserve to be bullied, and I will do what I can to make sure it stops. And to the perpetrator, bullying is not accepted, and I'm going to make sure that you stop. So those are the two overarching issues that we have to get. I hear all the time that parents say, "I don't want my child to be retaliated against," or they also feel like it's going to go away. I had 2 educators confide in me over the summer, and they were afraid to confront the bullying issue because they both worked for the school district where their son attended, and they feared retaliation in their job if they created a big mess. But it didn't go away, and the child ended up in psychiatric care, and that's okay that he's getting the help that he needs. But we also have to make sure that we're telling people to address it. We also have to create open lines of communication at the school, and we have to look at those programs. You asked earlier about the programs. A lot of people like to say, let's put them in peer mediation. But remember, bullying is about a perceived or real imbalance of power, and research shows that peer mediation works when there is a balance of power. So a bully would love to be in peer mediation with his victim. They would love to be there. So we have to look at that. We also have to look, a lot of people like to have the buzzword about zero tolerance. We have a zero tolerance for bullying. That doesn't work because that's exclusionary. So you put the bully out and he ends up going to an alternative school, or she ends up going to an alternative school, and they don't get any remediation. You know, we can look at programs all day long, and I'm not saying they don't work or they do work, but what we need to do is we need to start also putting our focus not only on the victim, but we also have to look at that bully, because if we don't remediate that behavior, that bullying behavior is not going to go away. They're going to continue to intimidate. So we need to look and see. It comes from bullies need to have control. And somewhere in their life, they felt like they've had a loss of power, and they're showing out at that point.
Okay,
so we need to do those anger management
Let's
things.
shift a little bit now. We've said we've blamed the parents enough here. There are some wonderful parents out there whose children have been bullied,
and
we
don't
hear
blame
these
the parents.
stories,
Yeah.
and we hear how they've gone out, and they've gone to the schools, and they've reported this, and they don't see anything happening. And that I understand student bodies are huge in schools today, and that there's so much going on, and some teachers are not as qualified as other teachers to handle these things. What could be better being done in the schools to help families that are experiencing this, and where are we falling down on the job? I'm going to go down here and start off.
Well, maybe this is the time where I talk a little bit about the laws related to bullying and cyberbullying. 45 states have laws that directly discuss or address bullying. Now, most of the states, Texas included, the laws don't criminalize bullying behavior. What the laws do is they force the schools to implement programs and to make bullying part of the code of conduct. So I think there has been a recognition that bullying needs to be addressed. And so in Texas, the Texas law that addressed bullying is part of the education code. Again, it's not criminalizing the underlying conduct, but it's forcing school districts to place bullying prohibitions in the student code of conduct, but also, probably more importantly, to ensure that there are prevention and education programs going on within the district.
Okay, but let's take a case like, and we mentioned Asher in the opening story, and reports are that his family had notified the school. The school itself was a hate-free zone, had spent in its history, and I don't know currently where it was at, it had done a lot on this zero tolerance, teaching respect. It was a principal school, an example for other schools to watch, and yet this still happened there. Can schools make this difference? And if they can, what are they doing wrong at this point?
Okay. We can make a difference, but again, we can't point the finger of blame out and say it's this person's fault or that group's fault. Right. We have to work together. And we have to get past that dyad of bully victim, because there are people that are affected. In fact, research shows that every bullying instance has at least 4 witnesses, and those people are affected at some level. At either they become passive bullies, or they will actually step up. So the conversation has to be in the school that every teacher will address it immediately, that the principals will address it immediately, and it will be taken seriously. And so there are steps, simple steps, that we have got to make sure that every teacher and every person that comes in contact with a child understands. If they witness bullying, call the child by the name and say, I will not allow you to bully. This will stop. That's the first thing that we need to do. We also need to include the kids in the conversation and say, it's okay, because we talked about the snitches and all that, but we want to encourage them to have open communication and stand up and say it's not right.
There's so much more on this topic. We're just about running out of time, and I know we're going to have to revisit this again. But before we do, I want to know a little bit more, Eric, about, so a child gets to the point where they feel there is no hope, where they've been bullied, they've reported, nothing happens. Where do you folks come in? What can they do?
Well, for example, if they're GLBTQ, we have a program called Hatch, which is a program that it's to achieve a climate of societal acceptance and understanding without regard to sexual orientation. And so basically, what we do is it meets on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Is for any GLBTQ person between 12 and 20. And so we have volunteers there that talk to them. It's kind of like a peer group. We do a lot of social activities.
Outside of that, you're at the point. You're
Right.
at the breaking point. There are numbers you can call. We've talked about the Trevor Project is a very big one, and we're going to put their numbers up on the screen in a second, but they can also call the Montrose Counseling Center, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If you are not GLBTQ, can you call the Montrose Counseling Center if you're at that moment?
Oh, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and the numbers are up there on the screen, so if you need to know, Trevor Project is 866-488-7386, or the Montrose Counseling Center is 713-529-3211, and there'll be a counselor to help them through.
There'll be somebody that will be able to help them through that, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have 30 seconds left. I'll give that to you.
All right. We also, in the HISD, Houston Independent School District, work cooperatively with our HISD Police Department. So if parents want to call and they need to have an anonymous tip line, they could call 713-641-7446. If they want to call our police department and identify the name in the school, they could call 713-892-7777, and we will investigate. We take it all seriously.
We'll have those numbers and the other numbers on our website. Thank you all for coming in. I'm sorry it was under such a difficult situation, but hopefully we'll do something good. Now, each week we invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Simply click on the local program bar, pick Houston 8, and you can join our online community. Read about the guests, learn more about the topic, and even watch past episodes. That does it for us tonight. Until next time, I'm Ernie Manous. Thank you for joining us, and have a great week.